Kugelstadt.
Exactly.
Google what?
Oh, nothing. I was just telling Goat I was doing my kegels.
Yep.
Yep. Gotta exercise that muscle.
Mm-hmm.
I still
Gotta grip that dick.
Gotta...
I just want to say, like, I understand why this is a $30 game, because from the start, the game doesn't really try to hide what it is. It's just a game where you run around and shoot stuff. You know, it doesn't really go much farther beyond that for me. And sometimes when you have to shoot stuff, you have to do other stuff, like plant a bomb or save some people or investigate a place, but everything is pretty much right there.
Very minor side missions.
Yeah, everything is pretty much right there, laid out in front of you from the get-go. And if that's what you're looking for, that's really great. But if you've played any of the other games, that's probably why you wanted to come and play this one, obviously, and to kill Nazis in as many new and exciting ways as you can. And the game totally delivers on that, but everything else kind of falls apart around that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. This game tried really hard. And I think it put its money where the other games' mouths were, and it tried to come out full bore, $30 game, thinking that anyone would just buy it because it was cheap. It was a Wolfenstein game, and it can't be worse than the other ones that came out that got high praise. The game has a lot that's lacking inside of it. For some things, it does well, and others, it just completely falls on its face.
For me, it's like I'm coming from being such a huge fan of all the other games, you know, and the New Order and New Colossus were just super rich in story elements and their cutscenes. You know, you got really involved with the characters, you learned about the characters' backstories. But here, it was totally rushed. Like, you get that initial cutscene that kind of adds some context about, you know, BJ's dad now, and then it just kind of falls apart. And the other games had, in my opinion, you know, a really slow-paced intro, taking the time to give all the details and plot points to not only give you a sense of the story, but also envelop you in the world.
So yes, as far as story is concerned, the game doesn't waste any time introducing you to the new characters. Of course, if you're a fan of Wolfenstein, if you've played the previous games, then you know who BJ is. You know his backstory. So now we're 20 years in the future, and he's got two twin daughters. And it starts strong story-wise. Like, the intro cutscenes are done really well. The graphics are really good. The facial expressions and animations are all, like, top-notch, what you would expect from this company. But that's about as far as it goes. Like, the few story elements we do get through cutscenes are done pretty well. But it all, like you said, it all feels rushed. It all feels like hurried out the door, and they just didn't take their time building character. I don't feel any emotional attachment to any of the characters in the game. It doesn't immerse you in their lives and their story. You just feel like this is just a reason for you to go kill zombies, and that's it. Or Nazis.
Zombies, Nazis, whatever. They're all interchangeable.
Zombie
Nazis. Yeah.
That would have fixed everything. They just
no Call of Duty here.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's like what you said, that there was a lot of stuff that was set up by the previous games, and if you played them before, that's good. But it's been fucking 20 years since the last game, and we find out in this game that BJ killed Hitler. Like, you don't kill Hitler in any of the previous games, and then all we really hear about is, you know, this uprising in Paris being the most recent event or whatever. And I guess if you've played the VR game, what was it, Cyberpilot, then some things have probably been filled in, but it's like, even then, there's just this huge gap, and the story doesn't take any time to even really fill you in, aside from the occasional, like, oh, I killed Hitler, and now the world is kind of fucked, you know, and that's about it. And then it felt like even that was a setup for, like, something else, you know, like, they set that up to be like, okay, well, I killed Hitler, but he had this world-ending project that reacted when he died, and now we have to go fix that. And then that is kind of just mentioned, and then that's it. And
exactly. Everything unfolds as just like oh, and this, oh, and that, oh, and this. It doesn't really... They could have spent some time in that intro cutscene showing, what happened at the beginning of that 20-year gap or the end of your last adventure that you played as BJ, showing him kill Hitler and kind of like unfolding what happened in the future in that gap time, right? Like let us see what happened that led to this point, and it doesn't have to be a long, arduous task to do that. You just have to give us a few minutes of video to kind of like cover all the bases so it brings us up to speed.
There is some of that backstory in the collectibles you can find, like some of them is in the floppy disks that you find throughout the game.
I think that's really cool when they do stuff like that, but I don't think that you should ever have to get the main plot points or backstory from any game that you're playing from like little tidbits of lore littered throughout the game, hidden in little nooks and crannies. Like those are awesome, and I think they have a place in a game, but those should be things that like to fill in like littler plot points or go off on a tangent and let you know about this one character's backstory that maybe wasn't super relevant in the game but was pretty interesting, so you can kind of get to know that character a little better. But that was kind of ridiculous, and I don't think players should be expected to do that. It breaks immersion from within the game. When I play a game, I want to be inside that world. I want to be surrounded. I want to be in a little game burrito, you know what I mean? I want that thing to just hug me and be like, oh yeah, it's nice and warm in here, isn't it? And just give me all the story elements, all the little morsels that taste delicious. That's what I want from a game. And games like this and others, they don't do that. They give you these little things you have to go after just to fill in the blanks, and that's kind of uncalled for in my opinion.
Yeah, it just kind of was a bit of a letdown as far as story and how they presented it and all that stuff. It just, again, $30 game, maybe it's not supposed to be a full game experience, but I mean, if you're going to tell the story, you might as well take the time to make sure that all the pieces that people want to know are there and filled in.
On one hand, you have like pretty damn good graphics. I mean, it's definitely an art style. It's not trying to be hyper realistic, but as I've said to you guys before, like the characters' facial animations are really good. I remember there was one scene when the FBI director is talking to Anya, and like she's smoking a cigarette and she says something that makes this like sneer on her face, and she even like licks the top of her teeth. Like it's just this little tiny thing that you would never really think of because it's a video game. But then when I think back and I think of that scene and she does that one little thing, right? It's like a little quirk, a little personality touch that they added to that character, and in most instances it wouldn't even matter. No one would even notice it. But like I'm like, wow, they really thought this through. They really did a good job with these characters, bringing them to literal life. The animations were done so well most of the time. Like I said in the beginning, when Soph's training with Anya and she's punching the bag, and she gets tired and she wants to give up, and she kind of just falls to her knees, and her mom marches over to the table and grabs the knife and like comes up behind her and grabs her and like puts the knife to her throat. Like this is what would happen if you gave up fighting a Nazi, essentially, right? You would be dead at this moment. And like you can see the emotions on both of their faces, and the sunlight's coming through, it's shining across their eyes, so you can kind of see that emotion brought forward to your attention, and like you can see the pain and the fear and all these different emotions inside their faces as they're struggling through this, because she doesn't want her daughter to die. Her daughter doesn't want to die either, and she's scared because this could have meant my death. Like that's all awesome, man. They did a fucking phenomenal job with that. But it means absolutely nothing at the end of the day because the story is so contrived and so just like piecemeal, you know what I mean? Like it just it's not cohesive in any way whatsoever. So it loses its luster, and it's like, you're in that moment, you enjoy it, and then by the end of the game, you're like, meh.
Yeah, the graphics were pretty great for the most part. There was one part where me and Silent were playing together, and we were walking through, and the sun was like coming through the trees in like the middle of this villa, and the lighting was just really good. The animations were really good, and it's pretty.
You did an amazing job.
It's pretty standard fare for these games. Just really detailed, and a lot of little details kind of all over the place in this map that helped things stand out, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I think the lighting engine in this game, and I'm not a professional. I don't really know a whole lot about lighting between different engines in different games, but I think that really helped the graphics in this game pop and come to life, because as you said, seeing those God rays come through the clouds and kind of like light the scene up and so on and so forth, even on the opposite end of that spectrum, when you go down into the tunnels and all you have is your flashlight, you know, like the way the light works, like that lighting engine and in that scenario could have worked really well for like Nazi zombies, you know, and just scaring the shit out of you, because it has that same effect where like you really can't see much outside of the flashlight. You can see a little bit around the edges, it's feathered in, but like it really, like the shadows cast from the objects while you're down there, it's really disorienting. And that's like kind of what it would be like if it was pitch black dark. It's done really well. I think it really adds to the level design with all the objects and props that they have in place, just littered everywhere, just to bring it to life and make it feel like someone actually lived in this apartment, you know what I mean, and spent a lot of time in here planning this or doing that. You can see that when you walk into a building.
They added a lot of small details to every building you go into. I remember going to one building and you could hear music from inside a building. So I was curious, so I went inside that building, and apparently there were probably the Nazis playing Tetris on a computer screen, which was really funny to just see that.
It was on an Atari. It was an actual Atari sitting on that table. Yeah.
So that amount of detail, I love that about that game. Like they really
absolutely appreciate that.
Yeah, and they crammed it all into what is a pretty small map for the most part, at least compared to like other games, and it's totally not a bad thing in my opinion. Although I do miss, you know, being able to like in the New Order, you go through a bunch of different countries, and then New Colossus, you're in America for the most part, but going all across the country and stuff. In this game, it worked kind of having the smaller map. It kind of reminded me of Dishonored in the bit of that sense, where it was a smaller map with areas that you visit several times over.
God damn it, Goat. Absolutely. I was thinking the same thing the other day, and I completely I was just like, wow, the level design, like the way that you go in and out of these buildings, and kind of everything's kind of tight, you know?
Yeah.
But it's populated really well, so that it does feel a little bit larger, but it absolutely reminded me of Dishonored.
But I have to say, one big, like a major downside I've seen in the game is when you go in one of the big main missions where you have to, basically do a raid is what they're called, and raid one of the big brother buildings, where you go up on scaffolding and you look down on the city of Paris, and the graphics on when you look down on Paris is bad,
atrocious. It's terrible.
Fire.
It's like the by far the worst part graphically of the whole game. That was like shocking.
Everything else looks so perfect, like beautiful, but when you go up the scaffolding and you look down, it's like, did they just not have enough time to finish this or something?
Or they just
it's so much worse because the graphics of the building that you're traversing when you get up there are just fine, but then you look out and it's such a stark contrast. It literally, it looks terrible. And I leads me to believe, I'm pretty sure it's got to be a graphical bug. I don't think they intended it or left it that way. It's possible. I just don't think that they would have missed something that big and said, fuck it, send it out. You know what I mean? Let's get their money. I don't think they would have done that. Like, there's a lot of the things this game isn't, but I don't think it's like an absolute piece of shit. You know?
Definitely.
Could have been right there.
And it didn't give you any sense of depth either. Like, it didn't feel like those buildings were far away. It felt like they were, like I could have just jumped right onto them from where I was, which was supposed to be 2D. Yeah, which was supposed to be, I'm on top of this huge ass building towering over Paris, but I felt like I could reach out and touch them.
But that's pretty much the only major graphical thing that I think is bad about the game, because everything else still looks amazing.
Yeah, everything else matched up with the other games, like I said, and I thought it was a beautiful looking game.
It's kind of bland. It's I've heard other people say it, but it's pretty much a looter shooter game.
Yeah, it's a little hard to mess up shooting Nazis. Like, it is what it is, for sure. It's fun for a period of time. Well, I think the only thing that they did that you could say break the mold from the other games would be the shitty co-op that they forced on you.
Yeah.
Even if you're playing single player, you're still forced to play co-op, quote unquote, with an AI that's garbage.
Yeah.
You know, like all the buddy system or whatever, where you got to go unlock a door and you got to wait for them to get to the other latch to pull the lever so that the door will open, and there's like trillions of them through the game you got to go through, and it's tedious.
Yeah, and for all this fancy technology that all these Nazis supposedly have, none of these fucking doors work. You gotta pry open all of them. You gotta pry open a door to get into a working elevator, and then you get to the floor and you have to pry open that door. It's like, what?
Yeah.
It felt like one of those things that the game kind of forced on you, to where like you were forced to play co-op, kind of like what you said. There was one aspect of that I kind of liked, where you had to request the code and then like the other person had to type that in. I thought that was a creative way to kind of implement the co-op and forcing the two players to kind of work together. But
I agree.
Other than that, it just was like weak and a bunch of repetitive stuff that just felt like it was a gimmick. It wasn't utilized in ways that it probably should have been, and it was overutilized in ways that it should not have been.
Good idea, poor execution.
Exactly.
It was cool the first couple times, and then it got really old really quick. Just like everything else you had to do with the buddy. Even if you were playing with another player, which arguably is more fun than playing single player, the things that you had to do as a team to make it through to progress to the next part of the level was literally just doors.
Yes.
They should have added more to it. There should have been more things you could have done that were more interesting, or maybe more challenging to do as a team to get to the next level to progress. That would have made it a little more interesting and probably a little more worthwhile to play with another player.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think mostly what everybody going into this game probably wanted was just a co-op Wolfenstein game, like without any sort of gimmicks, just like two people blowing up Nazis and all that shit. And I mean, you kind of got that to a certain extent, but while it was that, it also kind of wasn't, and it had the look and feel of a Wolfenstein game, but there were enough new elements where you could tell that it was trying to be something different from the previous games, which isn't a bad thing. I don't think fans of the game were clamoring for something new and exciting, you know, like they just kind of wanted to play Wolfenstein with friends this time. And like I said, you kind of get that, but you also kind of don't.
Yeah, almost at a cost. You get it, but then there's this, and this that makes it less appealing.
I personally liked the character upgrades. It may have been a little bit of fan service, like maybe they were trying to do like a Destiny type thing, or the most recent Far Cry New Dawn. I liked it. I liked how you were able to upgrade certain aspects, like you could upgrade your axe throwing power, and you could upgrade, you know, who you could utilize the sneak attack on, you know, because at first you couldn't sneak up on the big guys with like the tanks on their backs,
the Uber soldiers.
Yeah, the Uber soldiers and stuff. But then you got an upgrade, and now you can, and it made different aspects of the game just way more tolerable, in my opinion, and being able to kind of sneak around. But then there were other things with that system that were kind of pointless, in my opinion. Yeah.
That's one of the things I disliked. Is so the game has a perk system, kind of maybe like what you said earlier about maybe it was fan service to just gamers in general, because it does seem like a lot of games are going in that direction, using RPG mechanics to kind of bolster the gameplay of first-person shooters or just about any kind of game. Really, they're adding those type of mechanics in the games to make them, or at least give the illusion of them being more complex than they truly are. In this game, it doesn't really do anything to help it. It's a dumbed down version of an ability tree, and all the abilities, while some of them are decent, like I said, with the cloak and the throwing axe, like that kind of made me feel invincible for a little while throughout the game. But then that's like super overpowered. Some of the other stuff really, like I didn't put anything into health or armor, and I still did fine. I mean, I might have got down more than you guys did, I don't know, but I didn't feel like I was at a disadvantage because I didn't upgrade my armor and health tree. I pretty much just put everything into cloak, the smash ability, and my axes, and I think I did like one or two other things, like just a little bit, you know what I mean? But I pretty quickly found out that just by maxing out these two skills, I could swiftly go through all the maps and complete all the missions with relative ease, even on hard.
And I totally agree. And even the leveling up as an aspect itself, you know, there were towards the beginning of the game, like before you get to like level 20, there was me and Silent tried going to the first brother, and the giant robot kept just knocking us down pretty much in one hit. But that was pretty much the only time where it seemed like the level of the enemy mattered. And then as far as leveling up through the rest of the game, there wasn't like any direct correlation between, like, or at least it felt like, how difficult the game was getting based on your level. It just seemed like it was a way to justify the skill tree.
I agree. It was just a way to justify that.
So you have these characters that have armor types on them, and you get that whole prompt in the beginning about how certain guns beat down different armor types better or whatever. Man, I didn't utilize that aspect of the game at all. I didn't care what type of armor they had. I just went at them with whatever gun I had. Most of the time it was like the shotgun, and just took them out as quick as I could. Sometimes I would try to utilize the gun that was, you know, the suggested gun type against that armor type, but I didn't really notice too much of a difference as far as like their armor going down quicker or whatever. I just tried to use whichever gun I knew did the most amount of damage the quickest, and most of the time that worked. And then it was like you had those like special Nazi soldiers who I think they were all women, and they had a bunch of armor but like a little bit of health, and you just would throw an axe at them and they would die.
Because that's one of the things, the bigger gripes I have about the game is the health and armor system per enemy.
I was going to say is the big guys, the big bosses, and just pretty much every big guy is just a giant sponge.
Yeah.
Like,
bullet
even though you
sponges.
use the same armor type, like the big boxes are the heavy armor, and then the stripes are the light armor or whatever. It doesn't matter because it just doesn't go down.
Yeah.
Like, it takes the same amount of bullets, and my ammo goes like out before I kill the guy.
The enemies, like Silent said, they felt like sponges. They didn't feel like, oh, this enemy is harder than that enemy. Maybe that the weapon they were using did hit harder than another enemy's weapon.
Yes.
Other than that, all you had to do is stave off that attack for a while, try to get cover, run around, and like, you know, shoot them more. But it became a chore. Like I could see if like the basic enemies went down in a few shots, and then the bigger enemies were a little bit of a sponge, but there was no like difficulty level. They didn't move different from the other enemies. They didn't like really do anything different other than have a stronger gun and a fuckload of armor, and that just made it annoying.
Searching for coins kind of got old real quick. I mostly just kept searching because I wanted to keep unlocking new upgrades for my guns, which that was
talking about those coins.
Yeah.
There's microtransactions in this game by getting gold bars, but I didn't really feel like it was necessary to buy those gold bars because you got enough coins to just buy everything. Well, not everything you wanted, but you had enough to buy the most of the gun and gun equipment.
Yeah,
you want.
As far as the gun upgrades, yeah, it was like, you know, you didn't have to search long to get almost all of those upgrades, or at least all the ones that you wanted. And then as far as the microtransactions go, you didn't really need them for anything. You still got like all the aspects of the game, whether or not you did you put real money into it. It seemed like the only reason why they were there was for the aesthetics, like changing your outfit and maybe a couple other paint on the guns. There
were a few, like 2 different melee weapons you could buy with only gold bars.
But again, it didn't do any extra damage or anything like that. But even with that, to where it wasn't, you know, a microtransaction to win type of setup, or you couldn't buy anything early, you couldn't buy levels or any of that crap. The fact that there were microtransactions even in the game, it's like, fuck you, dude. It just bugged me.
It didn't really bug me that much, to be honest, because there was no need for it, so I just didn't really look at it.
Well, that was one of the things why it bothered me. It was like,
I agree.
Only reason why you put this in here was to get a little bit of extra cash, and you made sure that if we wanted to get these outfits or paint jobs or whatever, that we have to buy them with
Well,
real money, you know.
I-
And it's
Well,
like,
that's the way
rather-
I feel about it, because there was a few that you had to have the gold bars to get, but the fact that that was implemented in the first place, and then not only that, even if you can unlock most of the skins and the cosmetics with just the in-game currency, which you do get plenty of, I've noticed that, is that they're all trash, man. They all look like absolute shit. There's nothing special about any one of them other than slightly like different color or whatever. It's not even like themed at all. They're all just the same exact skin, the same exact model with different colors on top. Like, so it's not like a game like Apex offers a lot of cosmetic variation for their weapons, and you can buy some of that with in-game currency. They don't give you much of that currency, and it's all buy the currency outside with real money. But that's also one Apex a free game. Apex is a free game, but like you actually get something, even if you don't like microtransactions, you get something that's like that was purposefully made. In this, it just seems like a lazy approach to get a little bit extra money because they didn't charge a lot for the game, which I already think is, even at $30, is overpriced in the first place.
I mean, I'd rather have them put something in, but isn't really necessary, than put something in that I want, but it's behind actual money.
No,
Because
I
I would even be more mad if they did something like
make
that.
it pay to win. I'll give you that.
yeah.
But in a game that I already feel a little bit burnt on, then it just adds fuel to the fire. I'm just like, well, fuck that too.
Yeah, exactly.
They put microtransactions in this.
So what are your guys' overall opinions? Like, would you recommend this game to somebody at the very least?
My final opinion, I mean, if I would give it a score, I would give about 6 to 6.5. So not a bad score, but also not really a good score. I would recommend the game, but I would give him a warning first, saying it's not a long game. It could get pretty boring after, like, let's say 10, 12 hours, because that's about the time I put into the game to completely finish it. And but there's also a special pack where you get the body system pack, where you, instead of buying it for like each of them buying it for $30, you can get it for $40, I think it is, and you can give one of them for free to your buddy. So only paying $20 for a full game, that is, in my opinion, well worth the money. I don't think $20 or $30 is the right amount of price for this game. I think it's recommendable, but it needs a warning.
Yeah, as far as my recommendation goes, I think I would have to basically say the same thing, that it's a fun game. There was that moment where, you know, Silent, you and I were playing, and I said I was having a blast, and I really was. I think probably just a part of that was probably just coming from the fact that I was playing a Wolfenstein game with a friend, and at first it was just like, hell yeah, this is fucking great, you know. But yeah, like, I would recommend it to somebody who is a fan of the Wolfenstein series, and if you're into that, I would definitely recommend it, you know, just to kind of expand on the story for yourself. But other than that, yeah, I don't think I would tell somebody, you know, hey, pick up this game, you'll love it, you know, or even if you got a friend who's down to play it with you, I don't think I would recommend it. So I think, yeah, probably maybe even a 5 out of 10, man, just because there was a lot that kind of I felt let down about.
I would say that I couldn't recommend this game to anybody. If it was on sale, then say for, I don't know, $15, maybe 20, I guess I'd say it was a safe buy, because you still get some enjoyment out of it. But being that it falls so short story-wise, and a lot of the game mechanics were not well realized, there's just a lot of wonkiness going on in the game, and it feels like an unfinished game. It feels like they could have done a lot more with it than what they did, and what they did do felt rushed. It felt like they just wanted to put something out there to keep people interested in the Wolfenstein name, make a little cash. Definitely feels like a cash grab to me. I mean, some things were done well, as we said in the main part of the review. The animations were great. The graphics were really good. You know, there was a lot of painstaking effort put into the little details within the game world, but regardless of all those things, they weren't enough to keep the game or for the game to stand on its own 2 feet. I did enjoy the game in the sense that it unfolded kind of like a cheesy 80s action flick.
Yeah.
It definitely felt campy to me in a good way, but at the same time, none of the characters had really any backstory. They had no emotional attachment. There was no development of any of the characters within the game. Personally, I'd give it probably pretty much a 5 out of 10. I mean, right down the middle. There's some good and there's some bad, but there's nothing great. You know, there's nothing that makes it stand out.
Hey, thanks for watching our review of Wolfenstein Youngblood. If you guys have a different opinion of the game or want to talk to us more about what you thought, please let us know in the comments. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We got a lot more playthroughs and reviews coming your way. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Cantina Gaming.